I'm noticing a trend, my friends. In just this past week, I sat with three different women in my one on one mentoring sessions. Each of them, in hushed voices and with hesitant eyes, admitted the same thing. I'm secretly a witch, but I don't know if I'm allowed to say that out loud, especially in my business. These were not isolated confessions. They were echoes of a deeper collective truth, one I know intimately. So today, sparked by a revelation I had while watching Chappell Roan's electrifying, unapologetically wild Grammys performance, I'm pulling back the curtain on something many spiritual women business owners quietly wrestle with: the fear of being too mystical, too magical, or too, quote, out there to be taken seriously. We'll explore why feminine power often looks different from what the world deems to be, quote, professional, what we risk when we keep our spiritual gifts hidden, and how to begin weaving your inner witch into your business in ways that feel both aligned and authentic. If you've ever felt like you're living in two worlds, strategic expert by day, intuitive mystic by night, this episode is for you. It's time to stop shape-shifting to fit in. Your magic isn't a liability, it's your greatest asset. Welcome to Herself, a space for women to have deep conversations about the intersection between spiritual entrepreneurship and fulfilling your potential, so you can become the woman you truly are in every area of your life. After being in business for over 2 decades, I've learned, as you likely have too, that as you grow your business grows you in unexpected, often challenging, yet miraculous ways. Here, we'll talk about how to get out of your own way so you can grow a business that's abundant and sustainable while allowing you to be a force for good in the world. I'll give you simple, actionable strategies as well as wisdom and inspiration to help you root into your wholeness, lead from your values, and work in ways that feel deeply aligned so you can bring your true self into the world through your business and in every area of your life. I have a confession to make. I'm not typically someone who keeps up with pop culture. If you talk about the latest actor or movie or song that's just taking off, I'm probably not going to know anything about it. And sure, I'll flip through US Weekly while getting a pedicure or getting my hair cut. It's one of my guilty pleasures. That's usually the extent of it. However, every December during my annual planning ritual that I do right before the holidays, I do something that might surprise you in that, and it surprises the people that I'm close to too. So I carefully mark all the major awards shows for the coming year in my calendar. So the Oscars are my favorite. I consider them to be like the feminine Super Bowl. They're a big event in my home. And honestly, the Grammys usually rank at the bottom of my list. I'm not a huge music person. But this past February, I did find myself turning on the TV for the Grammy Awards anyway. And I am so glad I did because what happened next completely captivated me. So on came this performer I, of course, had never heard of before, Chappell Roan, singing Pink Pony Club. And you've likely heard of it. If you haven't, you need to get online right now and look up her performance of Pink Pony Club at the Grammys, and you will thank me for it. Because from the moment that she appeared on stage, I was completely transfixed, and I'm not exaggerating. Here was this bold, unapologetic expression of feminine power that truly felt electrifying, magnetic, and yes, kind of weird, but weird in the most magnificent way. The colors, the theatricality, the absolute commitment to her unique expression. It was unlike anything that I had seen before. And there was something just so liberating about watching another woman fully express her most vibrant, unusual self on such a mainstream platform. I could not look away. And The song is very catchy. So, all of this is exactly what makes this kind of feminine expression feel so dangerous to the patriarchy. When women step fully into our power, when we refuse to be contained, categorized, made predictable, it is threatening to the systems that have worked so hard to keep us small. So think about it. So much of our conditioning is in place to help us all conform, to look the same, to act the same. It's no accident. When we're all following the same script, we're much less threatening. We're much more predictable. Our power is diminished. We are controlled. But when a woman stands in her full, weird, wild glory, that power is too scary. It's too disruptive for the status quo. And it takes us back to the witch hunts throughout history, where they weren't really about magic. They were about silencing women who refused to conform, women who knew too much, who held power outside the established systems. So I sat there watching this Pink Pony Club performance, and something clicked in me. I realized that I was witnessing something that resonated deeply with conversations that I've been having with women in my private mentoring sessions. And just in the past week alone, 3 different women, all of them accomplished professionals in various healing fields, therapists, yoga teachers, healers, they confessed to me in hushed tones that underneath it all, they really just feel like they're a witch. Not literal cauldron stirring witches, although who knows, maybe that too, but women who sense they have gifts, intuitions, ways of working with unseen forces that go beyond the conventional methods that they've been trained in. Women who feel called to something more mystical, more connected to ancient feminine wisdom traditions, women who know that there is magic in what they do, but they've been carefully hiding it behind their more acceptable professional veneers. And I couldn't help but wonder what would happen if these powerful women allowed themselves the same freedom of expression that Chappell Roan embodied on that Grammy stage. What if they stopped dimming their light and hiding their most intuitive spiritual selves? How might their businesses transform if they embrace their own version of their own Pink Pony Club? How might their impact and their enjoyment deepen? So, this is all exactly what we're going to explore today. Why so many women who are spiritual, who are business owners, feel that they need to keep their most authentic gifts in the closet. What it costs them and those they serve when they do it, and how to begin embracing your inner witch in your business, your marketing, and your client work. Because here's what I know for sure: feminine power, when it's fully expressed, it looks weird. It just does. It's different. It's outside the box. And that's exactly where its potency lies. And that's exactly what makes it so threatening and why we're all so conditioned to conform. So if you've ever felt like you are too much, too intuitive, too spiritual, too mystical for your chosen profession, this episode is especially for you. It is time to come out of the spiritual closet, my friend, because the world needs your magic now more than ever. So let's start by talking about what I mean when I say inner witch, because I acknowledge that some of you may feel like, right on, let's talk about witches. And some of you may feel repulsed by that word, or you could be anywhere in the range in between those two extremes. So when I talk about the inner witch, I'm not necessarily referring to someone who practices Wicca or who identifies with any specific pagan tradition, though that might be true for some of you listening. What I'm really talking about is something much broader and more fundamental to our experience as women. The inner witch is that part of you that knows things that you were not explicitly taught. It's your intuition when it whispers insights that logic simply cannot explain. It's the part of you that senses energy shifts in a room before anyone even speaks. It's your connection to cycles, to nature, to the wisdom that lives in your body rather than just your mind. For the women that I work with, often therapists, healers, coaches, yoga teachers, other spiritually rooted female business owners, this inner witch often shows up as the feeling that there's something more to their work than what their certification or degree taught them. It's this sense that they have gifts that don't fit neatly into professional frameworks. So, one client, a therapist with 20 years of experience and all the right credentials, told me, Sarah, I know this sounds crazy, but sometimes I can feel what's happening in my client's body before they even tell me. I get images or sensations that guide our work together. But I never write this in my notes because it just sounds too woo woo. Another highly successful leadership coach shared, I've been working with plants and plant spirits since I was a child. They speak to me, they guide me. But I've never once mentioned this to my corporate clients, even though these conversations inform the wisdom I bring to our sessions. And just last week, a yoga teacher with a thriving online community admitted, I've been reading tarot cards for 30 years. My greatest insights about sequencing and themes for my classes come through the cards, but I'm terrified my students would think I'm a fraud if they knew. Does any of this resonate with you? That feeling of having a secret superpower that you don't dare reveal? And what's fascinating to me is that these women are all really extraordinary at what they do. Their clients and their students rave about their work, they get results, they create transformation. And a significant part of their magic comes precisely from these intuitive, energetic, mystical aspects that they're hiding. Yet they've been taught, we've all been taught that these ways of knowing are somehow less valid, less professional, less trustworthy than more conventional approaches. We've internalized the message that our deepest feminine wisdom needs to be disguised in language that sounds more clinical, more scientific, more acceptable to our dominant culture. And let's be honest, this is not just about personal conditioning, it's historical. The witch hunts I mentioned earlier weren't just about eliminating certain women, they were about eliminating certain bodies of knowledge, herbal medicine, midwifery, dream interpretation, energy work, skills passed down through generations of women that empowered communities outside established power structures. So when we hide these aspects of ourselves in our businesses, we are unconsciously continuing this legacy of separation from our own power and from collective feminine power. So I really want to emphasize that the inner witch isn't about casting spells or wearing pointy hats, though if that's your thing, I'm here for it. But it's about reclaiming ways of knowing and being that have been systematically devalued. It's about recognizing that your sensitivity is not a weakness, it is a strength. Your intuition is not making things up, it's tapping into information that's available beyond the five senses. Your connection to cycles, to nature, to the unseen is not something to apologize for. It's something to celebrate and actively integrate into your work. Because here's the truth, your clients aren't coming to you just for what you learned in your training. They're coming for you, for you, for your unique perspective, your energy, your presence, your magic. They're seeking something that they simply cannot get from a book or a conventional approach, even if they don't explicitly name it that way. So, before we talk about how to even start coming out of the spiritual closet in your business, I want to ask you a few questions. What aspects of your inner witch have you been hiding? What intuitive gifts, what mystical experiences, what unconventional ways of working have you kept separate from your professional identity? And what might be possible if you began to integrate them? take a moment to really sit with that because acknowledging what we've been hiding is the first step toward a more authentic expression. And now let's talk about why it feels so scary to bring these aspects of ourselves forward in our work. When I ask my clients what stops them from bringing their full spiritual selves into their businesses, the responses often sound like variations on a particular theme, and perhaps you'll recognize some of these fears in yourself. My clients would think I'm unprofessional. I'd lose credibility in my field. People would think I'm making it all up. I'd be seen as flaky or unreliable. No one would take me seriously anymore. These fears aren't irrational. We live in a world that has systematically devalued intuitive feminine ways of knowing. A world that privileges data over felt sense, analysis over embodiment, linear thinking over cyclical awareness. And if you've spent years, maybe decades, building your reputation, investing in credentials, establishing yourself in your field, the thought of risking all of that can feel nothing short of terrifying. So, one woman in my core program, as a thriving practice, put it this way: I've spent $200,000 on my education and 12 years building my practice. The thought of my colleagues finding out I use oracle cards to help me prepare for client sessions makes me break out in a cold sweat. I get it. I do. But here's what I want you to consider. What is the cost of staying hidden? What toll does it take on you and on those you serve when you separate your professional self from your spiritual self? So, from what I've witnessed, the cost is substantial and it manifests in three key ways. First, there's the energy drain. So, think about how much energy it takes to maintain a divided self, to constantly monitor what you say, how you say it, what you reveal, what you hide. That vigilance requires tremendous energy that could otherwise be directed toward your creativity, your service, your impact in the world. So one client described it as, quote, having to translate everything twice. So first accessing her intuitive knowing, then kind of filtering it through a more, say, like acceptable professional language before even sharing it. And so she says, by the time it comes out of my mouth, it's just lost so much of its power. Now, second, there is the authenticity gap where we're not fully embodied in our work. People can sense it and they might not be able to name exactly what's missing, but they can definitely feel it. There's a resonance that happens when someone is fully aligned and integrated in what they're offering. And let's be honest, there's a dissonance when they're not. And this authenticity gap doesn't just affect how others perceive us, it also affects how we feel about our own work. And it creates this subtle but also persistent sense of fraudulence, like a nagging feeling that we're not fully showing up. And over time, this can lead to burnout, resentment, a creeping sense of meaningless in work that should really feel deeply fulfilling. And third, and you could say perhaps this is the most important, is the impact limitation. When we dilute our gifts, we dilute our impact, period. Because life wants us, like a whole purpose of our life is to become who we truly are. And if we're hiding that, we're not going to be able to have the full reach that we are really designed for. So now let's take this back to Chappell Roan's Grammy performance for a moment. And what made it so captivating wasn't just her technical skill, because she's very talented. It was her complete, uninhibited expression, the full voltage of her essence coming through. That's what made it magnetic. Now, imagine if she had toned that down, if she had made it more conventional, more, quote, acceptable. Would it have had the same power, the same impact? Of course not. And while you may not be performing on a Grammy stage, I'm certainly not, definitely not in this lifetime. The same is true for you in your work. Your greatest impact comes not from conforming to expectations, but from channeling your unique magic, your full, weird, wonderful self into everything you do. So, when the women that I work with finally start integrating their spiritual gifts into their work, when they stop hiding and start embodying, something profound happens. Their work becomes more powerful. They enjoy it more. Their client results deepen. Their businesses grow. And here's the most beautiful part: the very aspects they were afraid would drive people away often become their greatest attractors because they're not conforming anymore. They don't just look and sound like everyone else. And the clients who are meant for them are drawn precisely to the magic that they've been hiding. So I ask you again, what is it costing you to stay in the spiritual closet? What impact are you not having because you're doing that? What fulfillment are you not experiencing? What magic are you keeping from a world that desperately needs it? And most importantly, what if the very thing you're afraid would destroy your business is actually the key to its next level of growth? Now, let me be clear. I'm not suggesting you make a dramatic announcement on Instagram or wherever tomorrow declaring yourself a witch and completely overhauling your business overnight. Coming out of the spiritual closet is a process, it's not an event. So, how about we talk about some practical ways to begin this integration thoughtfully and authentically? So, like I said, coming out of the spiritual closet in your business isn't about making a dramatic pivot or suddenly changing everything about your work. It's more like a gentle unfurling, a gradual, intentional integration of those aspects of yourself that you've been keeping separate from your professional identity and maybe separate from everyone in your life, although likely the people who are closest to you already really know this about you. So here are some steps drawn from both my own firsthand experience and the paths of many women that I've mentored through this process. And remember, this isn't a linear checklist, it is a spiraling exploration that looks different for each woman. So take what resonates and leave the rest, always. So, step number one is to start with self connection. Before you change anything external in your business, begin with deepening your relationship to your own inner witch, or use whatever language you want there if the word witch does not resonate with you. This is fundamentally an IFS process of getting to know the parts of you that hold your intuitive gifts, that hold your feminine magic, as well as the parts that have been protecting you by keeping them hidden. So I recommend creating a dedicated practice to connect with these aspects of yourself. It doesn't need to take a long time, it doesn't need to be elaborate. This could be like journaling conversations with your inner witch, or a meditation focused on your intuitive centers, or even creating artwork or movement that expresses these energies, but somehow giving them an outlet. And ask yourself, what does my inner witch want me to know? What gifts is she offering? What support does she need to feel safe emerging more fully? And just as importantly, connect with the protective parts that have been keeping this energy contained. These parts have been working hard to keep you safe, accepted, successful in the ways that they understand. And they've likely been doing this for many generations. And you likely inherited these protective parts from your parents and your grandparents and generations beyond that. So approach them with genuine curiosity and compassion. You could ask these protector parts, what are you afraid would happen if I express my spiritual gifts more openly? What do you need to feel secure as I begin this integration? So, this inner work creates the foundation for a more authentic outer expression. And without it, any changes to your business risk feeling forced or inauthentic. So, step two is to find your spiritual sisters. One of the most powerful antidotes to the fear of being too, quote, weird is finding your community of kindred spirits, of other women who are walking similar paths and navigating similar challenges. And this is exactly why I create spaces in both my signature online program and my signature in person retreat, where spiritual women business owners can fully express themselves without fear of judgment, where the conversation about business strategy naturally includes things like energy work, intuition, spiritual principles. And side note, later this month, I will be opening registration for my very first in person herself retreat. This is an immersive experience that is specifically designed for women ready to step fully into their mystical leadership and create businesses that express and honor their deepest gifts. And I'll share more details about this as we get closer. So stay tuned. I'm very excited about it. But you also don't have to join a formal program to find the support. You can look for small groups, online communities, even one on one connections with other women who understand both your professional field and your spiritual orientation. And having this kind of support does two crucial things. It, well, first, it normalizes your experience, showing that you're not alone. And it provides a safe space to practice more authentic expression before taking it out into wider audiences. So can kind of give you that dress rehearsal space. And step three is you want to begin with subtle integration. So now you can start bringing elements of your spiritual self into your business in ways that feel manageable, that don't feel too overwhelming. And the key is to start small and just build gradually as your confidence increases. So one approach is to begin with something called a bridge language, which is finding ways to talk about intuitive or energetic practices using terminology that your audience can relate to and can still find credible. For example, instead of saying I received a download from spirit, you might say I had an insight during my meditation practice. Rather than saying energy clearing, you could describe creating space for new perspectives. Or instead of reading your Akashic records, you could say accessing deeper patterns in your history. And, all of this depends on the context and who you're talking to and all that. But this is just to give you some examples. And it's not about being dishonest, it's just about creating some accessible entry points for people who might be off put by unfamiliar terminology. And maybe if you language things a different way, they might dismiss your credibility. And unfortunately, that is just a result of the very patriarchal world that we live in and have been living in for a very long time. And it's changing. And obviously we're part of the change. And that's what this conversation is all about. So, another subtle integration approach is to bring your spiritual practices into your behind the scenes business processes without necessarily announcing them. So, for instance, using your intuition when designing programs or creating content, setting intentions or doing energy work before client sessions, allowing lunar cycles to inform your business rhythms, consulting oracle cards when making business decisions, and this allows you to work with your gifts while gradually becoming more comfortable with their presence in your professional life, like giving them a more prominent seat at the table in your business. Step four is to test the waters with a safe audience. So as you start to grow more confident, you start sharing small aspects of your spiritual approach with audiences where you feel more safe. This could look like mentioning a meditation practice that enhances your work in a newsletter, sharing an intuitive insight that proved helpful, like I had a feeling about this, dot, 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 or introducing, say, a simple ritual or energy practice in a group program, or referencing how nature or cycles influence your approach. And then pay attention to the response. And what I found and what my clients consistently discover is that the reaction is almost always more positive than expected. And often these small revelations can create openings for clients to share their own spiritual interests that maybe they've been keeping hidden. And step 5 is to refine your client attraction strategy. So as you become more comfortable expressing your spiritual gifts, you can begin to intentionally attract clients who are looking for exactly that unique combination of both conventional expertise and intuitive wisdom that you offer. And this is a powerful combination that is not so easily found. And I think the world very much needs more of it. So, this might involve updating your website copy to subtly reflect or more overtly reflect your holistic approach, creating content that speaks to both practical and spiritual aspects of your work, developing offerings that more explicitly integrate your unique gifts, gradually refining how you describe your ideal client to include openness to intuitive or energetic approaches. And so, for instance, one of the things that I do, I have a page on my website for my one on one mentoring. And on it, I say, this is a good fit for you if, and I list several things that would point to it being a good fit. This is not a good fit for you if, and list several things that would point out that it's not a good fit. And one of the things that I have been more overtly bringing into my mentoring and all of my work is my intuitive sense and including in my one-on-one mentoring intuitive readings. And so I have in there, this is not for you if you're highly skeptical of intuitive readings and you're not going to be open to the information that's coming through because I don't want to be sitting there with someone who is just doubting everything that I say. So think about that as you are, considering who you're drawing in, who are the people that you want to work with. Remember, you do not need everyone to resonate with your work. You just need the right people. And being more authentic about what you really bring to the table, that helps those right people find you while naturally filtering out those that will not be the best fit. And step number 6 is to create containers for your fullest expression. And as your comfort and integration grows, you can consider creating specific offerings where you can express your gifts more fully. So this might be a VIP day, a special retreat, a package that integrates therapeutic work with astrological guidance or Reiki healing, all sorts of things. And these explicitly include the intuitive, energetic, or spiritual elements of your work and become sacred containers where you can share your gifts with clients who are specifically seeking that deeper level of work. And throughout this integration journey, remember that discernment is different from fear. And sometimes not sharing certain aspects of your work in certain contexts is simply good discernment. Not every client or audience needs or wants the full expression of your spiritual gifts. And the goal isn't to suddenly start talking about energy and intuition in every business conversation. It's to develop the freedom and flexibility to bring those aspects when they serve, when they add value to your work, rather than maybe creating unnecessary barriers. So, as always, trust your own timing, trust your own process. This isn't a race or a competition to see you can be the most out with your spirituality. That's like the opposite of what we're doing here. But it's about gradually allowing more integration between who you truly are and the work that you're here to share with the world. So before we close today, I want to address something that is super important to this topic that I know many of you are feeling, and which is really why you haven't been doing this in the first place. So it's that tightness in your chest when you think about bringing more of your spiritual self into your business. It's that voice that whispers, what will people think? It's the fear of judgment, rejection, even ridicule that can make this process feel so darn vulnerable. And I really want to validate this fear is so normal. In fact, I'd be surprised if you didn't feel it. We women, we are social creatures. We are wired to seek belonging and to avoid rejection. And many of us, maybe even all of us, carry deep ancestral memories of what happened to women who stepped outside acceptable boundaries with their spiritual gifts. So, how do we work with this discomfort? How do we move forward when parts of us are terrified of being judged? First, I want to remind you that fear is not a sign you're doing something wrong. It is a natural response to stepping into greater authenticity and visibility. Fear is what happens when we start dismantling the protective mechanisms that we've built over years, decades, centuries, millennia. The discomfort itself is part of the growth. That said, there are ways to work with this fear that honor both your desire for integration and your need for safety. I'm always a fan of a both and approach, not either or. So begin by acknowledging the parts of you that are scared. And this is where IFS work can be so powerful. Instead of trying to override or push through the fear, take some time to sit with it, pour it a cup of tea, ask those frightened parts, what are you afraid would happen? What do you need to feel safer in this process? And often these protective parts, they hold wisdom about timing and pacing that it's truly worth listening to. And they may not want you to stay hidden forever, but they may have valid concerns about how quickly or dramatically you make changes. Second, start building your resilience to judgment. The truth is, as you become more visible with any aspect of yourself, as you start to break out of conforming to looking and sounding and acting like everyone else, some people will not resonate with it. And that's not a failure, it's a natural consequence of becoming more truly you. Third, create safe containers for practice. We've talked about this. This is why community is so essential in this journey. Remember, before sharing aspects of your spiritual self widely, practice expressing them in spaces where you feel most supported. Fourth, remember that vulnerability is a strength, not a weakness. When you allow yourself to be more fully seen, you create permission for others to do the same. Your willingness to be a little uncomfortable might be exactly what someone else needs to recognize and honor their own gifts. And fifth, develop practices that ideally you do every day that help you return to your center when fear arises. So for me, this is meditation, this is movement, this is time in nature, this is regular connection with my own spiritual guidance. And these practices root me into who I am. They help me remember who I am beyond any external judgment or criticism. So find what grounds you in your own knowing, what helps you remember the truth of your gifts, and make those practices a non-negotiable part of your life, especially as you step into greater visibility. Finally, be gentle with yourself through this process. Remember, integration is not a linear journey with a clear finish line. That is not what the feminine path is at all. It's a spiral path of expansion and contraction, courage and fear, expression and reflection. There will be days when you feel bold and clear, and there will be days when you want to retreat and hide, and both are perfectly normal. So what matters is not that you never feel your fear again, but that you develop a new relationship with that fear. One where it becomes a companion on your journey rather than an obstacle to it. Because here's what I know for certain. On the other side of that fear is a freedom you may have never experienced. The freedom to bring all of who you are to what you do. The freedom to serve from your wholeness rather than just your training. The freedom to attract clients who truly resonate with the unique medicine that only you can offer. And that freedom, that is worth every uncomfortable moment along the way, if you ask me. And you begin to work with these fears rather than being stopped by them, something remarkable begins to happen. Your journey of integration begins to create ripples that extend far beyond your business. So, this integration journey, it's not just about what you offer or how you market yourself, though those elements will certainly evolve. It's about the energy behind everything that you do. It's about the relief that comes when you're no longer maintaining those walls, those internal walls between your professional self and your spiritual self. And that reclaimed energy gets freed up for creativity, for service, for impact. And the timing of this integration has never been better. I mean, there's a reason why Chappell Roan performed the Pink Pony Club at this year's Grammys, because the world is ready. We are living through a significant cultural shift where the very wisdom that was once devalued is increasingly being sought out, even as it's increasingly trying to be extinguished, right? So the linear, purely analytical approach to business, to leadership, to healing and growth, they are showing their limitations big time. People are hungry for something more holistic, more soulful, more intuitive, more aligned with natural rhythms and deeper wisdom. So look at the exponential rising of interest in practices like meditation, energy work, ancestral healing courses, natural foods across mainstream platforms. Notice how concepts like intuition and embodiment are entering corporate settings, how sustainability and trauma and cyclical thinking are reshaping business models. These are not fringe movements anymore, my friends. These are becoming essential responses to the challenges that we are facing collectively. So, what does this mean for you? What does this mean for us? It means the cultural soil is becoming more fertile for the seeds of your authentic expression. The very gifts you've been hesitant to share may be exactly what your people are searching for, even if they don't have the language to name it yet, even if it's not a conscious thing that they're searching for. So I invite you to take a moment and imagine what your business might look like if you allowed more of your spiritual gifts to flow through it. What new offerings might emerge? What deeper level of service might become possible? How might your marketing shift to reflect more of your authentic voice? What kinds of clients might be drawn to this more integrated expression of your work? And imagine the relief of not having to filter your insights, your intuition, your unique ways of knowing. Imagine the joy of working with clients who appreciate the full spectrum of what you bring. This journey looks different for everyone. Feminine power looks different in each woman. And at first, like I said before, it looks a little weird, but it's not weird. It just looks weird because it looks different from all of us trying to look and sound the same. So for some, it might involve a complete reimagining of your business model. For others of you, it might be subtle shifts in language and approach while maintaining your current structure. There's no one right way to integrate, only your way, guided by your inner wisdom and responsive to the needs of those you serve. But overall, it needs to come from the inside out, from the belly up, not from the outside in and head down. What matters is that you begin, that you take those first steps toward greater alignment between your inner and outer worlds, that you start claiming space for your unique medicine in a marketplace that needs exactly what only you can offer, and marketplace that is saturated with everyone saying the same things in the same way. So when women stop hiding their magic, when they begin showing up as their full, mystical, powerful selves, they create ripples that extend far beyond their businesses. Like I said before, they create permission for other people to do the same. They help reweave ancient wisdom, ancient feminine wisdom, back into our collective tapestry. They become living invitations to a more integrated, harmonious way of being in relationship with work, with service, and with what success really means and what it really looks like for us as women. So, your journey toward this integration isn't just about your business. It's about your contribution to this larger remembering that's happening all around us. It's about adding your unique thread to this beautiful rewilding of feminine power that's unfolding in our time. We were born for this time. So, what would it mean to you to come home to yourself and your business in these ways? What becomes possible when you allow your inner witch, your spiritual self, your mystical knowing to inform how you serve? What healing might you offer to yourself, to your clients, to our world by bringing these parts of yourself out of the shadows and into the light? Whatever your next step is, know that you are not alone on this path. There is a growing community of women walking this journey of integration, each in her own way. Women who are remembering that our power does not lie in conformity, but in our unique expression. Women who are reclaiming ancient wisdom while creating new paradigms. Women who are daring to let their weird, wonderful selves shine through in everything they do. And you belong among them. Your voice matters. Your magic matters. The world is waiting for exactly what only you can offer in your unique way. So thank you for joining me for this exploration today. And remember to stay tuned for details about the upcoming Herself retreat later this month. It is going to be a powerful container for exactly this kind of integration work in community with other spiritual women and business owners. Until next time, may you have the courage to unleash your own Pink Pony Club, and definitely go watch the recording of that performance if you have not seen it. And I'm inspiring myself to rewatch it. I've seen it so many times. My fiance, Chris, is like, do we really have to watch this another time? Like, yeah, we do. So let your weird, wonderful self shine through in everything you do. Thank you for joining me today. And remember, change doesn't come from listening alone. I invite you to commit to taking one small or large, courageous action after today's conversation. One step you can take, if you haven't already, is to sign up for my Sunday journal. It's a weekly newsletter filled with inspiration and reflections about the intersection between spiritual entrepreneurship and fulfilling your potential to help you become the woman you truly are in every area of your life. You can subscribe at programs-sarahavonstover.com/journal. And if you found this podcast valuable, please share it with the women in your world. Also, I'd be very grateful if you'd leave a review. It helps others find resources like this, and I'd love to hear what's coming alive for you after listening today. Above all, keep going, and never forget the unique offerings you and your true self bring to the world. Until next time, I'm sending you my heartfelt support.